This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
Good morning, 7 minutes after the top of the hour. I'm Duran Martinez. Welcome to the Steve Gruber Show, in for Steve today. Lots of things going on around the world, around the state. We'll get to a quick look at some state news. Jurors in the trial of a Detroit area police officer who punched a driver 16 times are visiting the scene of the bloody beating. Wayne County Judge Vonda Evans plans to take jurors on a field trip today to Inkster. William Melendez punched Floyd Dent in the head during a traffic stop last January. It was recorded on dash cam video. Melendez is charged with assault and misconduct in office. An ex-convict suspected in the death of a woman found in a house fire in Michigan has been captured in another state. Midland County authorities say Gregory Rose was arrested Monday in Minnesota after a high-speed chase. He was traveling in a vehicle stolen from the Army Corps of Engineers. And not quite sure how you think you would get unnoticed in that. Now, mind you, it might have been a car, but it's still going to have identifiable markings. And with that vehicle being reported stolen, criminal, genius, you're not going to go far. A judge has denied a motion to dismiss a lawsuit filed by a group of transgender people against Michigan Secretary of State Ruth Johnson. 6 transgender people living in Michigan filed the lawsuit in May with the help of the American Civil Liberties Union. The lawsuit argues the residents' constitutional rights to privacy are being violated by the state policy that makes it difficult or impossible to change the gender recorded on their driver's license. State officials will host a public meeting this week to discuss a series of reports on prospects for commercial fish farming in the Great Lakes. Michigan officials say they've heard from 2 operators interested in raising rainbow trout in floating net-like enclosures in Lake Michigan and Lake Huron. The meeting will be led by officials from the State Department of Environmental Quality, Natural Resources, and Agriculture and Rural Development. We've had conversation with our friends at the Michigan United Conservation Clubs, my good friend Drew Youngdyke, myself, had conversation with Rick Jones, Senator Rick Jones, on this very topic. And it seems that aquaculture in the Great Lakes is not a great idea, given the risks of the possibility of disease, infection, and invasives within the process of aquaculture, within the process of raising species of fish in the Great Lakes. Bad idea. And Drew or Senator Jones, if you're listening, I would love to know what's going on in the Senate and with MUCC about that. And again, we've discussed this in the past. And there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And given the fragility of the Great Lakes, seeing what we've seen with the invasive species in the Great Lakes, I tend to agree. I absolutely tend to agree with what is going on and possibly the obstruction of having these companies come in with aquaculture and fish farms, so to speak, coming in. I don't think that the economic impact to the good outweighs the possibilities of what could happen into the bad. 888-900-9966. If you'd like to discuss that topic or any other, we'd love to have you on. Activists say a new wave of airstrikes have struck the northern Syrian city of Raqqa, the de facto capital of the Islamic State group. There's been no immediate word On casualties in France, the military says the strikes early today destroyed a command post and training camp. They were the second wave of airstrikes by France against ISIS after Friday's terror attacks in Paris that killed 129 people. And Russian President Vladimir Putin saying that, they're going to go after the individuals or groups responsible for the inside work that was done on the bombing of that jet airliner that was taken down, the Russian jet airliner that was taken down. And they've started action. France has started action as well. But our government not in a hurry. French President Francois Hollande says he'll present a bill Wednesday for an extension of state emergency in France. It would grant police and the military greater powers of search and arrest. The local governments the right to ban demonstrations and impose curfews for yet another 3 months. The temporary state of emergency was put into effect following last Friday's terror attacks in Paris that killed 129 people. Current and former American officials say last week's attack in Paris showed the extent to which the Islamic State aspires to hit Western soft targets, including in the United States. Analysts point out the U.S. is better positioned to thwart such an effort, equipped with more robust intelligence capacity. They also say Muslims in the United States are far less alienated than those in Europe. One analyst says many attack plots since September 11th have been disrupted because of tips from American Muslims. The U.S. officials also say we are at a lower risk. It doesn't mean no risk. FBI Director James Comey says the Islamic State poses a graver threat than al-Qaeda. Federal law enforcement officials have repeatedly expressed concern about the spontaneous and unpredictable nature of the Islamic State's plotting. The head of Russia's FSB security service is now on board with the bomb theory and the crash of a Russian airliner jet. Alexander Bortnikov reported to President Vladimir Putin today that a homemade bomb placed on board caused the plane to break up in the air. All 224 people on board were killed. Putin vowed to hunt down those responsible, even offering $50 million to information leading to the arrest and conviction, which I think in Russia, their interrogation tactics are probably a little more, I don't know, effective, I guess. Is that the word I'm looking for? Their ability to convince someone to talk, should they get a lead, a bit more effective than what we're using. Just a thought. 14 minutes after the top of the hour, I'm Duran Martinez in for Steve Gruber. Effectiveness. That's what I like. Get the truth. Right? Protect our country. That's what I'm all about. So Steve Gruber Show. Find us on Facebook. Look for the Steve Gruber Show. This is the Michigan Talk Network.
Michigan, born and raised with Midwestern values and Michigan common sense.
Welcome back to the Steve Gruber Show. Duran Martinez joining you here. Dr. Kirsten Hoyt, Academic Dean for the College of Information Systems and Technology at the University of Phoenix, joins us here. We are getting ready to go cyber crazy with our purchases as the holiday season approaches. Christmas is coming, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but we need to find out ways to protect ourselves. Dr. Hoyt, how are you today?
I am very good, Duran. How are you this morning?
Doing well, thank you. Appreciate you joining us. And I, like everything else, like Facebook, like the Twitter, like everything, I'm very slow to get on board. But now I've gotten on board with doing things with my credit card online. And again, not something I've gone all willy-nilly and done, but there are ways that we still have to protect ourselves. And you have tips for that.
We do. And it's interesting to note that, cybercrime itself is up 23% just from last year alone. And in 2015, it's going to cost us $15 million to combat cybercrime. So it's really important to make sure at the individual level that we're really careful about how we protect our identity and protect ourselves online.
We're doing everything online. We are doing our stocks, paying our bills, doing our banking. But all of those things require passwords. And I love the commercial that the guy says, "Oh, it's probably one of my cat's names." Well, he's got 30 cats. How do we keep our passwords in order? And how do we even pick a good password?
Right. So there are a lot of ways to protect your identity online, and a password is one of them. And passwords, when you think about what you want to do with a password, you really want it to be complex. You want it to not be a word that's in the dictionary, not be one of your kids or your pets. Make sure that you are using combinations of capital letters, lowercase letters, characters, numbers, and that you change that password fairly frequently so that you're protected when you do that.
And that's difficult. How do we save these? I mean, is there a way to save them? Is there even a website for the passwords we have?
Well, there are. I know through your computer, oftentimes your browser will do this, and then there are also apps on your cell phone that will track those as well. But storing all your passwords in one place is equally as dangerous.
Yeah, so it's almost a no-win situation, but there are ways to do it then.
There are.
Absolutely. Is there a website where we can find out more about how to protect ourselves during this, especially this busy time of year?
Yeah, there are two. One is consumer.ftc.gov, and the other would be phoenix.edu/technology, and that's where you would find any University of Phoenix degrees in cybercrime.
Excellent. I know you're on a short schedule today, but I appreciate you joining us here on the Steve Gruber Show.
Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you, and appreciate the short tips. But any tips we can save ourselves some headache from being hacked and attacked, our bank accounts and everything else, our identity. Anytime we can keep those things in check, any kind of information we can get, it's always great. Thanks again to Dr. Kirsten Hoyt joining us here this morning. Going to go to the phones. Would love to have you here with us today. 888-900-9966. Matt in Okemos. Good morning. How are you, sir?
Yeah, good morning. I wanted to say that Obama said the surge didn't work, and the reason he stuck with that, even though he knew that it did, was he was willing to pull out. And he was doing his campaign promise from 2007, not looking at what was on the ground in 2012. And he knew, and he was warned by Bush, and he was warned by his generals, that if he pulled out, there would be a group that would come about. We didn't know what the name would be, but now we know the name, and he has blood on his hands. The result of this is that plane coming down, the jet airliner from Russia, and we know about Paris. He has done this and dismantled when we had them against the ropes.
Matt, let me ask you this question. You always look, it's the most difficult job in the world. There's no question. Many times I wanted to take into consideration that there may be a plan, but now we're not seeing a plan. We're seeing nothing but personal agenda taking its place. And when you as a regular person on a daily basis see France responding immediately, also with Russia vowing and already making 2 arrests, and their interrogation processes are going to be far better than ours because we have become so lenient. Do you agree that we're getting it wrong?
I think that he is protecting himself and the Democratic Party to the next election and his deal with Iran. That's what he's doing. He's a non-war president. He's declared that. The party is anti-war. They can't start getting into war, and they'll lose their base. And so it's all about politics, and that's what's led us to this position that we're in today, and he's making another mistake by not going with France and Russia.
All right,
we have allies now.
Well, exactly, but we're just waiting to see what happens next. Matt, appreciate your call in Okemos. It's going to go to Lisa, listening on our flagship station, Lansing's Big Talker, 1240 WGIM. Good morning, Lisa. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. What's on your mind this morning?
I wanted to comment on the password information that the lady from University of Phoenix was talking about. I happen to work for a company that does IT services for businesses.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of really good information on our website. If you don't mind, I'll say it.
Be shameless. Go ahead.
JustAsk.net. JustAsk.net. ASK does business IT services, but we also offer a lot of information on security for everyone because, well, basically right now, everyone needs it. Passwords really should have at least one number, character, capital letters, small letters, but it's got to be unique to you.
All right, Lisa, appreciate you listening here on Lansing's Big Talker, WGIM, the flagship station of the Steve Gruber Show.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty. Filling in for Steve Gruber, here's Duran Martinez.
Welcome back to the Steve Gruber Show, 27 minutes away from the top of the hour. I'm Duran Martinez. So good to have you along today. Love the calls. Love the calls as well. Always like to change it up a little bit. James Carafano joining us here on the Steve Gruber Show today, leading expert in national security and foreign policy challenges. Heritage Foundation's Vice President, Foreign and Defense Policy Studies. It's a big, long list of things. And I don't want to go through them all because we have things to cover. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Appropriate, right? This is actually a really terrible time for everybody that believes in freedom and liberty and the protection of innocence.
Absolutely, and it seems to me, and I've been saying this, and I've been stating it, and I'm sure there's not too much disagreement of the fact that it seems France is getting it right, striking back instantly. Russia is getting right, striking, vowing to get those responsible for taking down their plane, killing over 200. But we look at it as a hiccup, as a bump in the road, so to speak.
Can I disagree with you a little? Because I don't think Russia is getting it right. I think even when their citizens are murdered by ISIS, the Russians are in there primarily to protect Assad. Assad gives them a buffer with ISIS. It gives them access to the Mediterranean, protects their economic interests. They're not really interested in killing ISIS. As a matter of fact, they're happy if ISIS, goes after other people. The French, they may talk a good game, but look, the French aren't going to destroy ISIS. And, because we changed the flag on the tail of the plane that's dropping the bombs, to be honest, emotionally it may be very important, but practically it doesn't make a difference. ISIS is rooted in a state, and as long as that exists, it's a threat to everybody. But your point about the U.S. is, absolutely true. We have literally been, the only way to describe U.S. foreign policy is like the fire chief standing by the fire, watching the house burn to the ground. He says, "Don't worry, it's all contained."
And those words exactly. We've got this under control,
right? And so one of the things is it sounds it's all contained is great as long as it's not your house that's burning to the ground. But the other thing is there actually is no evidence that ISIS is contained, right? So, a matter of fact, I was going back and I was scrolling through some of the old news stories, and they said, well, because you probably heard that the same Friday that the Paris attack happened, the Kurds actually went on the offensive, took a very important town called Sinjar, and then there were all these articles. Is this the turning point in the war? Well, I found those articles over the last 2 years, right? So every time ISIS has any kind of tactical reversal on the ground where they lose a town or something, somebody goes, is ISIS getting ready to collapse? Well, they've proven they're very, very resilient. They can take an occasional loss on the ground and push back. But what they're now demonstrating is, because they've been absorbing literally thousands of bombing runs over the last 2 years, they're now demonstrating is not only can we take it, we can dish it out. And it's more than just Paris. I mean, and it's even more than just, I mean, the news now, the Russians have admitted that basically ISIS blew up that plane. But there was also another bombing in Beirut, and ISIS hasn't been active in Lebanon for a while. So they've done, in the space of a couple of days, they've done 3 attacks, which show that not only are they taking it, they're going on the offensive.
Speaking with James Carafano here on the Steve Gruber Show, and now we want to take in 27 governors wanting to turn away the thousands of Syrian refugees coming here to the United States. We see that one of the possible suspects that carried out the bombings in France may have embedded himself within that group of refugees. 27 governors in the United States say they don't want it now, but we have Colorado open arms. Yeah, well, I'm of two minds on this. On the one hand is, governors are the elected senior official. They're responsible for the public safety and the welfare of the people of their state. And if they have concerns, I mean, the federal government ought to listen to them. I think that's ridiculous that you would force a state or demand that a state do anything. And refugees aren't going to solve the problem. Letting refugees flood out of the Middle East, that doesn't solve anything. It just encourages more people, creates more humanitarian crisis. Saying that taking in refugees is doing something is like, having a hole in your carotid artery and you're bleeding out and you're saying, oh, we're relieving the pressure, right? That's not the answer to the problem, and it actually just exacerbates the problem. On the other hand, I will say that blocking the flow of refugees doesn't address the terrorist thing. Terrorists travel in very small numbers in any way they can. So, what we've already seen in the Paris attack is that parts of this were homegrown, parts of this may have been returning foreign fighters, and there may have been one or two guys that came in with a refugee flow. So what does that tell you? Well, it tells you if the only way you can make your state from terrorists is if nobody's allowed in there. So unless you're the Gobi Desert, pretty much, forget it. I mean, terrorists are a tiny percentage of anything except other terrorists. So these other things, I think, are the symptoms of the problem rather than the problem themselves. I'm not saying that the refugee issue is insignificant. I'm not saying that the administration has a stupid policy and that the governors are right to be concerned about having all this stuff dumped on them and they don't get a say in this. But we got to focus on the problem on defense. The way you stop terrorism is you go find terrorists and you stop them before they kill you. But the real problem is if you play defense forever, sooner or later, the other guy's going to score. And as long as ISIS controls this massive state in Iraq, it is the ground zero for the global Islamist insurgency. James Carafano is our guest here, suggesting that one. Well, let's just say hypothetically, it only takes one voice to convince other voices, to convince other people to follow along. And that's what we're seeing with this growing problem, this huge problem that is ISIS. Yeah, I mean, it's a much, much bigger problem for the Europeans because the Islamic populations that have migrated there do not assimilate well. They're largely isolated. They're open to vulnerable extremist propaganda. And, it's not surprising that in one way that happened in Paris because France and Belgium really, outside of Great Britain, that's probably the home to the largest extremist communities in Western Europe. John Carafano here joining us on the Steve Gruber Show. So looking at all this, what do you think the next steps are for the U.S. and for France and other countries that have been involved? Well, this is... somebody already stole this title, but I mean, this is the ultimate inconvenient truth. I mean, the one thing that the Europeans or this administration would like to admit is that if you really want to stop this metastasizing problem, you've got to go to the root of the tumor, and you've got to break ISIS's territorial control over Iraq. I mean, as long as they control Iraq, thousands of foreign fighters are flowing in all the time. They're raking in $1 million a day in oil revenue. If we really think we're going to bomb our way out of this problem, we've dropped 8,000 bombs already. How many bombs? What do people think that's actually going to accomplish? Who do they think is going to do this? The Arab countries don't have the capacity or the experience. I mean, the Kurds can't do this. The Iraqi military can't do this. The Europeans could, even if every country in Europe got together, they couldn't muster enough forces to go do this. So if we're not willing to go help do this, it's not going to happen, and we're just going to be
playing defense. And if all we're going to do is play defense, sooner or later the other guy's going to score.
All right, James Carafano, appreciate you joining us here on the Steve Gruber Show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe on the surface, I'll take my lumps on that one. Maybe on the surface, Russia does look good. But I guess doing something is better than doing nothing. Don't worry, I'm not going pink on you yet. It's the Steve Gruber Show, or will I?
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world. Filling in for Steve Gruber, here's Duran Martinez.
Welcome back to the Steve Gruber Show. I'm Duran Martinez, 15 minutes away from the top of the hour. Appreciate you joining us here. I'm pumped up. I think there's like 3 channels in my house. I pay just enormous amounts of money for, and I'm not, okay, let me state, not rich by any stretch. But because I like cable, I love the fact that I have 1,500 channels and I watch 3. One of them, the History Channel, National Geographic. The other one, and then the channel du jour, be no real third channel, but again, if I had only 2, it would be History Channel and National Geographic. They have a show coming up on the 22nd on Sunday called Saints and Strangers, an account of the first Thanksgiving. And I'm really, really looking forward to this because this is put together in a more historical perspective. And Tatanka Means joins us right now. Good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Tatanka, am I saying that correctly?
Yes, sir. Tatanka.
And I love that name. That is so cool. And I'm looking at your name, Tatanka Means. I'm like, where's the word buffalo? Because is that what it means?
Yeah, that's what it means. Tatanka means buffalo. You got it.
And look, I've gone through my whole life with the name Duran, but not as cool as Tatanka. And that's when I know it must be just strange to have that thrown at you first thing in the morning. But this is an account of the first people, the people landing here and meeting the natives that were on this land, and the coming together. And it had to be, even from a perspective, knowing what you know of today's society and technology and the like, to delve yourself back and put yourself into the position of your character. It had to be like really, really inspiring and really cool.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it was something else. Something a part of history that I before this did not know a lot about. I mean, I knew the general story that we learned in school. The school books which have been kind of fabricated. This story of the first contact and the first Thanksgiving and everything like that. So to actually go in and learn about the actual characters in history and be able to match those up to all the research that I've done, it was something else, man. It was really awesome and really educating.
Now, you had to learn a whole Native American language for this part.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. There's over 500 different languages in Native America, and within that, there's plenty of hundreds of different dialects. Mm-hmm. The language that we spoke is called Western Abenaki, and it is a sister language of the Wampanoag language. Western Abenaki is an amalgamation of several different languages that were blended together to save and preserve the language. I do not speak Western Abenaki. I speak a little bit of my own languages, which is totally separate and totally different and totally on the other side of the country. So to learn a whole new language on top of the acting and doing everything else, it was tasking, man. It was a challenge.
Now, it sounds to me that you grew up in the western states.
Yeah, I grew up in the Southwest, up in northern Arizona near the Four Corners in a place called Chinle. I'm Navajo, and Oglala Lakota, and Omaha. So my dad's from the north, from the plains, and my mom's from the Southwest.
Speaking with Tatanka Means here about the upcoming National Geographic show, Saints and Strangers, that'll air on Sunday evening. As a native yourself, does this for you and your family give you a sense of pride to be playing such a historic native yourself?
Yes, definitely. I mean, this is something that I'm, project that I'm proud to be associated with. National Geographic, they bring, integrity and historical accuracy to their projects. So when I found out that, Nat Geo was involved, I wanted to be a part of it because I knew that, they would bring integrity to the picture. But then when I found out that they were doing it in the Western Abenaki language, that was great, man. I mean, we could have been speaking, broken up English or doing something silly like that. But we spoke the language of the people, and I think that's what really legitimized it for me. And after reading the script, it was like, this is something that I definitely want to be a part of. And Hobomok, my character, he's a real person in history. These are all based off actual characters. And my character, Hobomok, was the war chief of the Pokanoket people. He was the right-hand man to Masasui, who was the chief of the Pokanoket people. And Hobomok eventually became the military liaison, in a way, between the tribe and the settlers at Plymouth.
Now, as yourself, Tatanka Means is our guest here. Putting yourself on this show, hopefully maybe other parts come across and maybe including your name with guys that I've always loved in actors, Chief Dan George, Iron Eyes Cody, Will Sampson. Do you find it to be a bit of an honor to have such a big part on what is going to be a big TV event?
Yes, thank you so much for that, man. It is an honor to be involved with such a great project and such a great role. And what I say about this, what I love about this is that, the native characters in history in different shows and movies, they're kind of one-dimensional, kind of flat. They're kind of supporting character. They don't really dive into their lives too much. But in this show, in this movie, the native characters are very three-dimensional. I mean, multifaceted. You're going to be really, really involved with their characters. I'm not just a warrior. I'm not just a war chief. I'm a family man. He has a family. He has a wife. He has a son. And, you get to see the hard side of him, his work life as well.
Tatanka Means joining us here on the Steve Gruber Show, Saints and Strangers Sunday.